Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to the webinar. Thank you so much for joining us here. The company presenting to you here today is Wine Intelligence. Wine Intelligence is a research and insights agency. They are focusing on wine consumer insights. They're dedicated to supporting the wine businesses and associations through consulting, branding, and market research. And today, the topic that they will be covering is, you can see it here, wine marketing and COVID-19, a very topical issue, and I'm sure a very interesting presentation. Your speaker for today here is Juan Park. He is the Director of South America and Spain. Just a couple of things to keep in mind during the webinar. The duration of the webinar is maximum 40 minutes. You can send messages to Juan in the chat box. You can find the small chat icon at the top right-hand corner of the screen. And he will be happy, together with his colleagues, to answer all your questions. And please, after the webinar, don't forget to visit Wine Intelligence stand and go look for further information. They are there to help you. And now, handing over to you, Juan. Please, the stage is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Matilda, for the warm introduction, and thank you everybody who's joining from different parts of the world. It's a pleasure for us to be here and share our research into marketing and wine, and especially during these uncertain times, because of course it's been a difficult month for everybody from an economic perspective, but also from a health perspective, which is more important. So difficult times. We hope we are keeping well, and yeah, thank you for joining. So today we're going to see, well, a few topics. Quickly, we're going to see what is the impact of COVID-19 in wine consumers with some examples of our research that we are conducting. We can also see what we can learn from other crises, because of course this is not the only crisis, and we can draw some learnings from past experiences, and then we'll try to wrap all up. So first, Matilda did a very good introduction, but just to expand on it, Wine Intelligence, we focus on wine markets and wine consumers, and we do research in the most important wine markets that you can see in the map in blue. And we also have offices in where you can see an orange dot, being the central offices in UK, where the company was founded. And the founders quickly realized that there was a lack of insights and research into wine, so they wanted to basically provide that service to wineries so they can make better decisions. So it was founded in the UK, in London, but quickly we expanded in terms of where we do research and also where we have our offices. And bottom right, you can see the logo for Vinitrack. And Vinitrack is a service to gather information from consumers. And some of the slides we're going to see today are from wine consumers. We survey more than 140,000 a year from all these markets, and we follow what they feel, what they consume, and what are their attitudes to wine. So today we'll see some of the results from a most recent research. Some say that now we are in a black swan scenario. And what is a black swan? Well, a black swan is an unprecedented and unpredicted time. And this, well, some say, well, it was somehow, it could be predicted, but let's be honest, most of us didn't know it was going to happen, didn't know how it was going to affect us, and therefore we were a bit unprepared. The name of why it's called a black swan is interesting, and this is because in the 17th century England, like, well, most swans were white. So there was a saying, well, I believe this when I see a black swan. Like now we say, I believe this when I see a pig flying. But what happened, of course, is that somebody traveled to Australia and actually saw a black swan. So then everything changed. So that's why black swans are unpredicted and unexpected, but they really change how we operate and how we experience things. They change, they provide dramatical changes. And I think we all agree that what we've lived or experienced in the last 3 months has been quite unprecedented and quite different. And this difference, it has provide us with interesting scenes, like many like activities were suddenly closed and or attracted a different type of visitors. Professions had to change how they worked, and now we are meeting in a virtual world rather than a real world. So the impacts of this black swan has been felt quite quickly and quite dramatically. Of course, it hasn't affected everybody the same. So there are some companies that had to close during the duration of the lockdown. So for example, airlines really suffered. Our lovely bars and restaurants have been closed for months, sometimes, and our visitor centers have been forced to close. And there's little we could do. There's like it was the law to stop, and it was the wise thing to do from a sanitary perspective. So these companies really had to just close and wait. Some other companies or other sectors have actually done quite well. We know that supermarkets have sold like it was Christmas for them every week. And they have been able to sell like all the food that was not consumed in restaurants, so directly to consumers. So we know they've grown as a channel quite a lot. Also, like puzzles, they had an unprecedented time now that we had more time at home, and also bicycles, they also experienced like an incredible growth because we couldn't do anything else. So, but the rest, or most of us, or most of our companies, being wineries or agencies, we had to adapt. We had to adapt what we do. And we've seen like cocktails or bars that will deliver cocktails by post, so you could mix them at home, and they had to adapt quickly. We see that in Rotterdam, this is an example. What they've done to help bars is to use the space previously used for parking, and they created artificial or new terraces just to help businesses provide that service when it was impossible to do it from a different way. We also seen like bars and restaurants that turned into shops. They had stock, they couldn't get people to dine inside, so they changed their model completely. And finally, for ourselves, we've turned into teachers at home, we've turned into chefs, we turned into DIY professionals, and all other things that we've done at home. For the homeschooling, it's interesting and difficult, as many of you know. I like that there was a survey that said that more than 50% of men thought that they did most of the homeschooling, while only 2% of women agreed with that statement. So for us, all of us to reflect on. And black swans, apart from having to change, they remind us what we should have done different. Now with the government response, we know, we should have closed earlier, so we didn't have this crisis lingering for so long. We should have closed like air travel from affected places, and everybody knows now what we should have done. And that's the thing with black swans. They always remind us what we should have done. And for wineries and businesses, they remind us, I should have a broader range of sales channels, because why do I have everything in the on-trade? Now I'm not ready to cope with the crisis. Or they remind us I should sell in a broader range of markets. Why do I have all my sales domestically or in one market that has been particularly affected? Maybe if I had a broader range, I would have done better during this crisis. And then remind us, oh, why don't I have a more diverse range of products? Because some products we know that have done better during the crisis than others. So companies that can offer a range of products can do better during this time. And finally, the reminder of I should be better positioned overall. I should be one of those products that people think of even during this time. So crises like this, they remind us of what we should have done. But interestingly, they also can uncover possibilities. Like now we are entering a period which is hard to predict, which looks a bit different, which is called the new normal, and we're still getting to grips as to how it will work. And it's difficult to predict, but what we know is that it will bring opportunities. For example, when a line of the underground it's closed for like fixing or whatever reason, like there are some researchers that analyze what people do. And of course, everybody needs to go use alternative routes to get to their place of work or whatever. Interestingly, when the line is open again, so after they fixed it and it's open, like they analyze that many people come back to previous habits because it's literally the preferred route or the only route. But experts analyze that some users of the underground have discovered that actually the alternative routes are better. Because maybe they're 5 minutes longer, but they can have a seat to read, or maybe they found like a different way of doing things. And I think this is what we'll see with this crisis. Like suddenly some channels have stopped, some activities have stopped, we need to do things differently. And when everything is open again, many of us will come to do what we did previously, but some of these new habits might be here to stay. And that's why it's very important to analyze what consumers do during the crisis, to try to see which habits they will have that are new and that are interesting and that create opportunities for us. So what has the consumer been doing? Well, I'm going to share just a couple of slides of our research we've done in the US. We have lots of reports of different countries, and we've seen just after lockdown, during the period that you see there, what were the consumers doing. And again, many of the habits will return to normal, but what we want to see is what is changing that could be interesting or valuable for us to know. And with these reports, among others, available for the US, but also for many other markets where we study. So you can ask us about them or we can chat in the stand. So in the USA, as an example, we know that wine has done okay. Still wine has done okay. People were saying that they were buying more than pre-coronavirus. So they're stuck at home and their frequency of consumption has therefore increased. Not all categories have done as well, like champagne. We see that suffered a lot for obvious reasons. And other categories were kind of level. So we see that during this crisis, at least wine has been kept stable or positive. What is more interesting is what happened by age group, because we do see that younger consumers were embracing still wine and even other sparkling wine more during the crisis. So perhaps we are not like the puzzles are bicycles for but we did quite well during this during this period. This is interesting because, as I said, younger people who are consuming a bit more when they are at home, which perhaps for them is a new habit. The shape of occasions has changed, and it's obvious, but it's interesting. Like, so we have more relaxing drink at home at the end of the day or informal, and what has really suffered is the formal dinner occasions or the parties, because obviously you need other people to join them for being special. So this is what we expected, like relaxing drinks is what we have been doing, and many times we've drunk to relax, especially if you have children. What's interesting is we found like new occasions at home. So for example, for young people, the occasion of chatting with a friend or family online over the phone. And here, like applications like house parties have been quite key. Like young people were stuck at home with their parents, and they found ways to communicate with their friends. But interestingly, it involves drinking wine. So new habits that could be forming. For many consumers, the habit of having wine while having lunch or dinner at home is something that they've recovered. Like we know that it was a key occasion for wine, like one glass of wine or two during meals. And we stopped doing it when we traveled for work or when we had to drive. But that is an occasion that we've discovered again, almost, no? And this allows like innovation in terms of packaging. We know that in many markets, like the packaging that has been more successful is bag-in-box, because it allows us to have these frequent and habitual wine drinking occasions. And then other is the third occasion, which is relevant for us, is the better meal than usual at home with a family or partner. And there's where we all try to do our improve our cooking skills with some better luck than others. But this is like the at-home treat. That is something that we've tried to keep. We couldn't go to a restaurant, but we try to enjoy like better quality meals and wine occasionally while at home. So interestingly, we've are drinking more at home, which is obvious, but for a slightly different mix of occasions, and that could bring opportunities for the future. And just one slide on future behavior priorities. So we ask consumers after the lockdown, what are they going to do more or less of? And they mention like treat myself to a better quality wine. So they will be looking again for these treats at home, try new alcoholic drinks. They're not going to be hosting big events, or they're not in the mood yet for big parties and celebrations, but maybe they will do like try new styles of food with their partner, or do things that are more affordable or safer for the moment. So let's see consumers that in the near future will not be open to just jump into restaurants straight away, but are finding ways to enjoy themselves under the new circumstances. And then in terms of spend, there are two realities. It's like, of course, consumers are looking to spend less, and they're a bit more cautious because we don't know what the future will happen. But still, once in a while, treat themselves to something luxurious or something that is that will improve their day-to-day lives. So we don't expect big purchases, big parties, buying a car or buying an apartment, but there's room for these little luxuries or everyday treats. And this is just one country and a couple of variables, but tomorrow in the keynote done by Luli Halstead, she's going to explore many other countries and many other variables. So I please invite you to attend that, because it's going to be very interesting. So we've seen that consumers are treating this seriously, new occasions, but trying to not to spend so much. What happened in other crises? Well, we can go back to the 2008 crisis to see what consumers did. From the Bain report, which studied like luxury goods, like they saw a dip. Obviously, 2008, 2009, there was a dip in consumption of luxury goods. Luckily then, after the crisis, China went crazy with luxury products. The problem is that now we don't know if China is ready to help us this time, or help the luxury market, because they themselves have suffered and are not growing as much. But for the purpose of this session, we know that consumers in a crisis will keep an eye on their wallet. And also we can see that it's not perhaps the right circumstances to enjoy the luxury experience with a mask and with all the protective gear. If we see a wine example I want to share with you, we can see what happened with sparkling wine. And I want to share the data for the UK and then for the US. And this was the market, the sparkling wine market in the UK, dominated by champagne and cava. And during 2008, 2009, cava actually grew, and everything that champagne was losing. So we saw that change from luxury, like champagne, to a more affordable everyday treat, like cava at the moment. But something else happened, which was Prosecco really starting to grow. And we see that while cava was growing fast, Prosecco was growing incredibly fast. And as they say, the rest is history. This is what happened to Prosecco after the crisis. So something that started in this 2008 to 2009 period was something that Prosecco really used to grow in the market. United States, similar story. Champagne cava grew, while champagne had 2 difficult years because people were not in the mood for big luxuries. But again, Prosecco was the category that really grew and has been growing ever since. So that's when we see that crisis can bring opportunities. It's like the underground. When something is closed, we can use new habits, and whoever exploits those new habits better can be successful in the market. And what we know with Prosecco of our sparkling research, which you can consult for the US and many other markets, we know that Prosecco, that was inexistent 10 years ago, now it's really doing, it's really established itself for the category for a party, for that is popular with friends, that consumers really like the taste, that is value for money, and that is refreshing. So a category that didn't exist last crisis has really positioned itself cleverly for this new occasion, which is not as luxury as champagne, but everyday parties. And this is what we're seeing now. People are doing the everyday treats, everyday parties. So let's see who manages to use this crisis and this consumer behavior to grow in the following years. We know that champagne has the quality, the sophistication, and the tradition and all that, but Prosecco has grown in this more informal social occasion. And then being in a conference about packaging, I just thought it would be, and keeping with sparkling wine, I thought it was appropriate to see what could happen in the future. Now we know that this crisis, as I said, could be a catalyst for new occasions. And we see that in the US, younger consumers are more open to alternative packaging, in this case for sparkling wine, but we know the same is true for still wine, where cans, half bottles, or smaller bottles are really being appreciated, especially by younger consumers. So these consumers that are starting to drink for other occasions could choose other packagings for their consumption. It could be a moment to accelerate this change. And also it could be a moment to accelerate a change in terms of preferences that consumers have. In a survey in the US, we see that younger consumers, especially younger females, they have a more openness or consideration for sparkling wine with added fruit flavors, with lower sugar, with lower calorie, that comes in a can, that is or lower alcohol. So we've seen, this is data from 2019. So we see that this openness, it was already happening before the crisis. So we wonder if the crisis is going to be a catalyst and help these categories. And interestingly, what has been growing the most in the US in terms of category, we know there is the hard seltzer. And the hard seltzer actually shares most of these attributes. So it's with added fruit flavors, lower sugar, lower calorie, and comes in a can. So as if our data could predict what the market brings, we can see the real preference for younger consumers for a sparkling that is this style. Of course, hard seltzer is not wine, but that's the challenge that wine businesses have, is how to compete and how to adapt to what consumers want. And for non-alcoholic, we see that maybe it's not wine, but other categories like sparkling tea that could grow and could be perhaps more important. We'll see. We will see. So as a summary, changes can create new consumer habits. This is the first building with an elevator, and it's in New York, and it's from 1857. And before the elevators, the most expensive flats or floors were in floor 1 and floor 2. Why? Because you didn't need to carry bags 5 floors up. But when the elevator was invented and commercialized, the reverse happened. Now suddenly the most expensive flats were the last ones because they had the better view. So sometimes consumers can change like that. Now in cities, before the most interesting or sought after locations were in the center because they were closer to home. But now with the crisis, now everybody wants a garden and some outdoor space. So that's what we could see, is that this crisis changes the preference, it changes what is important for consumers. And as we saw that Prosecco did well thanks to the previous crisis, we will see which categories and which products will do better thanks to this crisis. So changes can create new habits, which we need to study, but check the data to see what is here to stay and what isn't. There'll be lots of speculation. So now it's a good moment to really check the available research and the available literature, and just not to follow fads, but to follow the facts. We can expect relevant innovation. It's a time perhaps not for crazy innovation, but real innovation with new packaging formats that serve or help this increase at home consumption. We'll see lots of local consumption and closeness, and Luli will tomorrow in her keynote speak about it. We'll see consumers seek quality, but at the same time value. So it could be an opportunity for some. And finally, we need to reactivate consumers. Like crisis, what we know of previous crisis is that like people tend to be quiet, and sometimes you need to keep look at finances first, so it's understandable. But people who spend, actually the dollar you spend is more noisy, is more relevant, because if the rest are spending less, whatever you spend is a bit more visible. So now it's a good time to reactivate consumers, especially in channels that are relevant for wine, like the on-trade, where consumers might be a bit careful. Like, for example, myself now, I could go to a bar or restaurant, but I don't really feel like it. So I think that what we need to do as an industry is to reactivate consumers to make them come back to the habits that are relevant for us as an industry. And we're seeing that being done, like in other categories. Burger King is doing like these marketing ploys, but at the same time that help to tell consumers you can come back. It's safe. like we have all the measures. So this, of course, they don't have crowns like this, but what they want to say or communicate is it's safe to come back. In Pamplona, in Spain, there's a bar that has a robot serving like their beers to the locals, and I saw that it's slow, it doesn't work, but actually it was in all the news, in the national news. So again, it reactivates consumers. It tells them you can do this again, and my place is the one that you can come to because we have a robot. Not then I'm sure it will break in a day, but you know it does its purpose. So we need to reactivate by telling consumers that it's safe to do so. We can reactivate by being helpful. In Spain, there's a campaign to give wine tourism experiences for free for doctors and nurses. And lots of wineries have signed up for this to be thankful. Lots of wine producers are saying, okay, what the money you're spending with us is also helping bars and restaurants for the future. So they are giving wine for free to try to reactivate consumers to go back to restaurants and to go back to drinking wine in these settings. And of course, it's altruistic, but at the same time, if you help your partners, they're more likely to list your wine. So it serves both purposes. So we need to be safe, we need to be thankful, and finally, we need to be creative. Like this is a recent example, Sfricio Winery, that they had like 6,000 bottles of unlabeled Prosecco that they couldn't ship during the crisis. So doing a creative promotion to see who comes with the best label, and then they will share the profit. So it's a way of also like acknowledging, but also sharing and also making something interesting out of the crisis. And finally, my favorite example is Noma, who is of course a very high level restaurant, but for the first weeks they decided just to serve burgers and a glass of wine because they knew people were not going to be open to back to luxury straight away. They need to reactivate people, they need to share something which is affordable, and they need to first like make them used to the idea of coming back to restaurants, and later in the future they will, I'm sure, do well with their high class and more expensive menus. But for the moment, they're being conscious of what the situation is and acting about it. And the interesting of the 6 stories is that none of them are straight price discounts, even if they're giving stuff for free or they are reshaping their offer, but they're not price discounts, because price discounts, they might help today, but of course, if you are managing a brand, you don't want to devalue and get consumers used to like prices that they might not pay in the when everything goes back to normal. So this black swan, it's been a pain, but it's also served us to set ourselves some homework. So in 2 years, do we sell in a broader range of channels? Have we learned from this crisis? And how are we going to keep the systems going that help us the next crisis? Do we sell in more markets? Are we still very reliant on just a couple of places that make us more easier target for like during times of crisis, or doesn't allow us to be profitable during crisis? So in 2 years, did we learn the lesson, and are we in more markets? In 2 years, do we offer a broader range of products? Are we ready to go out of our comfort zone and see what consumers would like and expand our offer, or at least have our expertise? And in 2 years, will be wiser? And that is like making sure that when the next black swan comes, which of course we don't know what will be, are we more ready than this time? And we know that this time is very difficult. It's an economic and sanitary crisis. We don't know what will be next, but what we can do is try to be a bit more ready. And just to let you with some words, is treat this thing as if it were here to stay, and make sure you can deal with it. If it goes away, it will be a bonus. Meaning, now we've learned, we've suffered, but we have also like started systems that could be useful for the future. So I hope that when next crisis comes, we are all more ready for them. Thank you. So now I need to check the questions. So bear with me a moment. But I cannot find the questions. But yeah, well, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the fair. And it's been a pleasure. Thank you for the organizers for their very big efforts, and stay safe.